Okay, super quick tip. I'm guessing that most of you understand this and know how to do this already, but just in case, did you know that when you replace an Omnipod 5 or an Omnipod, or if you're out and you've had a sensor error, that you can retrieve the insulin from that pod? So for example, let's say you're out and you forgot to bring a backup pen with you and you have a pod error, which has happened and it's incredibly frustrating. You do not necessarily just have to go home with no insulin. You can actually retrieve the insulin that was in the defective pod if you have a needle. And so here's how you do it. So what I do is I save one of these needles from one of my past pods. And so this is a pod that I've recently finished using. So sorry for this terrible video quality, but I bring this needle with me everywhere I go. Now, when your pod breaks, just because it breaks doesn't mean the insulin goes bad. So you see that little hole in the top left corner? So that's where you put the insulin in when you originally get it. And so even though this is a used pod, I'm going to stick the needle in there. I'm gonna prime it. You can actually see some of the insulin coming out the front, but I'm gonna try to retrieve some of it. This is very tricky to do with one hand, so sorry for the quality. But this pod only had, I think, like 20 or something units of insulin in it, but you can see that I've gotten it. So the point is, bring one of these needles with you everywhere you go when you have the Omnipod 5. And I think it's best practice to bring an extra pen so that if something does break and you don't have extra supplies, you still can use that. But worst case, you can actually pull the insulin out of the old or discarded pod, and you can at least use that as a fail-safe. So this is what I do. So I bring this kit everywhere I go. So my insulin or my blood glucose meter, and I bring a needle or two. And I know that at least in the absolute worst case, I can get that insulin from the pod. You know, sometimes when it's, let's say it's like super hot out and I don't feel confident in bringing my backup supplies and let's say leaving them in the car or even bringing them with me, I kind of figure to myself, I don't know if this is right or not, but I figure, well, the insulin in the pod is already on my system. So it can handle the elements, it can handle wherever I'm going. So that insulin is going to be fine. So even if the pod breaks, I can use this method to get the insulin. So, you know, you might want to bring an extra pod, and if you had enough insulin, you could pull it out of the old one and put it in a new one, but you could also just inject that straight into yourself if you needed to. And I just find it to be a nice fail-safe. So hope that helps.